Mercedes-Benz has always been about building solid, dependable, and let's face it, pretty fancy cars. But in 1972, they decided to really raise the bar. They launched a car called the W116. The first official S-Class Mercedes was launched to rewrite the ultimate luxury rulebook. But how? What went on behind the scenes at the factory? Let's pull back the curtain on the W116 production line in the 70s. Before the W116 rolled onto the scene, Mercedes wasn't exactly starting from scratch. They had a line of successful big sedans, most recently the W108 and W109 series. Think of those classic elegant Mercs from the late 60s. They were popular, well-built, and definitely had that Mercedes feel. They were good, solid, stylish. But Mercedes wanted more, something revolutionary, not just reliable. The W108s were the standard models, while the W109s were a bit fancier, often featuring air suspension and more powerful engines, like the famous 300 SEL 6.3 powerhouse. These cars were successful, no doubt about it. They sold well and cemented Mercedes' reputation for quality. But the world was changing fast. By the late 60s and early 70s, technology was advancing. Safety was becoming a much bigger deal, thanks partly to guys like Ralph Nader in the US, and what people expected from a top-tier luxury car was evolving. Buyers wanted more than just a smooth ride and nice wood trim. They wanted better handling, more advanced safety features to protect their families, quieter cabins, and more sophisticated engineering. The W108 and 109, while great for their time, were based on designs that were starting to show their age. Their suspension was good, but not cutting edge anymore. Their safety features were decent for the 60s, but new ideas were emerging. Plus, competitors weren't sitting still. BMW was starting to make serious moves with its own large sedans of sporty luxury. Mercedes knew they needed a completely new car, designed from the ground up, to meet these new demands and stay ahead of the curve. They needed something that would incorporate all the latest thinking in automotive design, especially when it came to safety and handling. The W116 wasn't just an update. It was a full-blown revolution aimed at creating the best possible large sedan in the world, using all the engineering know-how Mercedes could muster. The success of the W108 and 109 gave them the foundation and the funds, but the W116 was where they were going to show everyone the future. When Mercedes started designing the W116, they weren't just thinking about making it look good, although they definitely managed that. They were obsessed with making the design work. Every line had a job. Every angle served a purpose. The W116 wasn't just styled, it was engineered to perform. Let's talk about looks first. The W116 had a distinct appearance that set it apart from its predecessors. Gone were the stacked or vertical headlights of the older models. Instead, the W116 got these big horizontal headlight units. Why? Simple. They provided a wider, more even spread of light, helping you see better at night, especially on twisty roads. Safety first, remember? And out back, they introduced those famous ribbed tail lights. Now, these weren't just for decoration. The engineers figured out that the ribs helped channel air and water away, keeping the lights cleaner and more visible in bad weather. Clever, right? It's little details like that which showed Mercedes was thinking about real-world driving conditions. The overall shape was also carefully considered. Mercedes was starting to use wind tunnels more seriously in their design process. For the W116, they worked on details like the shape of the windshield pillars and the side windows to reduce wind noise at high speeds. A quieter car means a more relaxed, luxurious ride. They even paid attention to things like the door handles designed to be flush and less likely to snag on things. but also easier to grab. Inside, the same practical thinking applied. The dashboard was designed to be clear and easy to read, with important controls placed within easy reach of the driver. No confusing clutter here. Visibility was a major priority. The driving position was commanding, and the large windows gave you a good view all around. They even thought about the little things, like designing switches that felt solid and were easy to operate without taking your eyes off the road. It was all about making the driver feel comfortable, confident, and in control. The W116's design wasn't just skin deep. It was a carefully thought-out blend of good looks and smart, functional engineering, setting a new standard for how a luxury car should be designed. Okay, let's get under the skin of the W116, because this is where Mercedes really flexed its engineering muscles. This car wasn't just a pretty face. It was packed with advanced technology for its time, especially in the chassis and suspension department. One of the biggest leaps forward was the suspension. Forget the simpler setups of older cars. The W116 featured fully independent suspension on all four wheels. Up front, they used a double wishbone setup, similar to what you'd find on race cars. This design helps keep the tire in better contact with the road during cornering and braking, leading to much better handling and stability. At the rear, they employed a sophisticated semi-trailing arm design. This setup was great at balancing ride comfort with predictable handling. What did this all mean for the driver? A car that felt incredibly stable and secure on the highway, soaked up bumps like a champ, yet could still handle corners with surprising confidence for such a big vehicle. It was a huge step up from the W108 and 109. To handle the weight and potential speeds, the W116 also came standard with four-wheel disc brakes. Many cars back then still used drum brakes, especially on the rear wheels, which could fade under heavy use. Having discs all around, with the front ones being ventilated for better cooling, meant the W116 had serious stopping power that you could rely on, time after time. Safety again. To make things smoother, Mercedes mounted the engine and suspension on separate subframes, then isolated them with rubber bushings. The result? That legendary vault-like ride. It felt solid, like it was carved from a single block of metal. Now, let's talk engines. Mercedes offered a range of power plants to suit different needs and budgets. Things kicked off with the 2.8-liter, that's 280 in Mercedes speak, inline six-cylinder engine, known as the M110. This wasn't just any old six-cylinder. It was a modern engine with double overhead camshafts, DOHC pretty advanced stuff for a sedan in the early 70s. It was available with either a carburetor, 280S, or Bosch K-Jetronic fuel injection, 280SE, which provided smoother running, better fuel economy, well, relatively speaking, and easier starting. If you wanted more grunt, you could step up to the V8s. There was the 3.5-liter V8 M116 engine, found in the 350 SE and SEL model, and the larger 4.5-liter V8 M117 engine in the 450 SE and SEL model. These V8s were smooth, powerful, and gave the S-Class effortless cruising ability. They also used Bosch fuel injection for efficient power delivery. But the king of the hill, the absolute legend, was the 450 SEL 6.9, launched a bit later in 1975. This beast packed a massive 6.9-liter V8 engine, an enlarged version of the M100 engine from the old 600 limo and 300 SEL 6.3. This wasn't just big, it was sophisticated. It used dry sump lubrication, like a racing engine, which allowed it to be mounted lower in the car for better handling and ensured consistent oil supply even under hard cornering. and instead of conventional springs and shocks, the 6.9 used a complex hydropneumatic self-leveling suspension system. This gave it an incredibly smooth ride, but also kept the car level regardless of the load. The 6.9 was a technical masterpiece, a true iron fist in a velvet glove, and one of the fastest sedans in the world at the time. Across the board, the engineering in the W116 was focused on creating a car that was safe, comfortable, durable, and performed exceptionally well. It set a benchmark that other manufacturers would spend years trying to catch up to. If there's one area where the W116 truly broke new ground and left a lasting legacy, it's safety. Mercedes engineers in the 70s were obsessed with making cars safer, and the W116 was their showcase. They didn't just add a few safety features, they fundamentally rethought how a car should protect its occupants in a crash. The foundation of the W116's safety was the work of legendary Mercedes engineer Béla Barényi, who had been pioneering safety concepts for decades. His idea of a rigid passenger cell with front and rear crumple zones was fully realized in the W116. Imagine the main cabin where people sit as a super strong safety cage. This part was designed not to collapse in an accident. Then, the front and rear sections of the car were designed specifically to collapse in a controlled way during a crash. These crumple zones absorbed the energy of the impact, slowing the car down more gradually and reducing the forces acting on the people inside that strong safety cell. It was a revolutionary concept for the time and became the basis for modern car safety design. But they didn't stop there. The doors were reinforced with strong steel beams to provide better protection from side impacts. The fuel tank, often a weak spot in older cars, was moved from its vulnerable position under the trunk floor to a safer location above the rear axle, significantly reducing the risk of fire in a rear-end collision. Inside the car, safety was just as important. The steering wheel featured a large padded boss designed to cushion the driver in a frontal impact. The dashboard was also padded, and switches were often recessed or designed to break away safely. Even the windshield was bonded in place, adding to the structural rigidity of the car. They thought about things like the placement of the interior mirror and door handles to minimize injury potential. And then, towards the end of the W116's production run, in 1978, Mercedes introduced another world first on this platform: the anti-lock braking system, ABS, developed jointly with Bosch. This electronic system prevented the wheels from locking up during hard braking, allowing the driver to maintain steering control even in slippery conditions or during an emergency stop. It was a massive leap forward in active safety, helping drivers avoid accidents in the first place. Initially an expensive option, ABS quickly proved its worth, and eventually became standard on almost all cars. The safety features pioneered in the W116 weren't just clever ideas, they were rigorously tested. Mercedes built its own crash test facilities and subjected the W116 prototypes to brutal impacts to ensure the designs worked in the real world. The impact of the W116 safety innovation was huge. It didn't just protect Mercedes owners, it forced the entire automotive industry to raise its game. Features like crumple zones, reinforced passenger cells, safer fuel tank placement, and eventually ABS became standard expectations for cars worldwide, saving countless lives over the following decades. The W116 wasn't just a luxury car, it was a rolling testament to safety engineering. So what was really going on in the plant? Let's find out. Now, let's step onto the factory floor. The Mercedes-Benz W116 was primarily built at the company's main plant in Sindelfingen, near Stuttgart, Germany. This place wasn't just some factory, It was, and still is, the heart of Mercedes-Benz production. A massive complex with a long history dating back to 1915. By the 1970s, Sindelfingen was a well-oiled machine, blending traditional craftsmanship with the latest production technologies of the era to build some of the world's finest cars. Building an S-Class wasn't like churning out cheap econo boxes. It was a careful, precise process. The journey of a W116 started long before the assembly line. It began with detailed engineering drawings, specifying every single component down to the last nut and bolt. These drawings were then used to create tooling, especially the massive, complex steel dies needed for the body stamping presses. These dies had to be incredibly precise to ensure every body panel fit perfectly. The first major step in building the car was the press shop. Huge, building-sized presses would slam down with immense force onto massive rolls of high-quality sheet steel, stamping out the intricate shapes of the floor pan, roof, doors, fenders, hood, and trunk lid. The noise must have been incredible. Quality control started right here, checking the panels for any imperfections. Next came the body shop, often called the body-in-white stage. Here, all those stamped steel panels were brought together. While automation was starting to creep in, especially with large robotic welders making precise spot welds in critical areas for consistency and strength, much of the work was still done by skilled workers using jigs and fixtures. These jigs held the panels in the exact right position while they were welded together, ensuring the body shell was perfectly square and dimensionally accurate. This structural integrity was crucial for both safety and the car's overall solid feel. Constant checks and measurements were made throughout this process. Once the basic body shell was complete, it moved to the paint shop. This was a multi-stage, almost ritualistic process designed to provide a deep, long-lasting finish and excellent corrosion protection. First, the body was meticulously cleaned and treated. Then, it typically went through an electrophoretic dip coating process, often called E-coating. The entire body shell was submerged in a primer bath, and an electric current was applied, ensuring the primer coated every single nook and cranny, inside and out, providing a crucial layer of rust protection. After drying in huge ovens, further primer coats might be applied and sanded for a perfectly smooth surface. Then came the color coats with multiple layers applied, often by both automated sprayers and skilled painters for tricky areas, followed by clear coats for gloss and protection. Between coats, the bodies would pass through more ovens for curing. The quality of the paint finish was a point of pride for Mercedes. With the body painted, it was time for the drivetrain installation, sometimes called the marriage. Meanwhile, in other parts of the plant, engines and transmissions were being assembled on their own lines. These complex units were often hot-tested, run briefly before being installed in a car to catch any potential issues. The complete engine, transmission, and sometimes the front subframe assembly would be brought up from underneath the car body, moving along the line, and carefully bolted into place. Then came the final assembly. This was where the painted body shell truly became a car, and where human skill was most evident. It was a beehive of activity. Workers would install the complex wiring, harnessing the car's nervous system. The dashboard, pre-assembled with instruments and controls, would be carefully fitted. Sound-deadening materials, carpets, and the headliner went in. Skilled craftspeople installed the seats, door panels, and any optional wood trim. Glass windshield, rear window, side windows were installed using advanced sealants. Doors, hood, and trunk lid, often painted separately to ensure coverage on the edges, were precisely aligned and hung. Bumpers, lights, grille, and exterior trim pieces were fitted. Finally, all the necessary fluids, engine oil, coolant, brake fluid, windshield washer fluid, and a bit of fuel were added. The last step before a W116 left the factory was final inspection and testing. This was rigorous. Every car underwent checks for functionality: lights, wipers, horn, instruments. They went through water leak tests to ensure seals were tight. Wheel alignment was checked and adjusted. Many cars would be run on a dynamometer rolling road to check engine and transmission performance under load. Sometimes, cars were even taken for a short road test. Finally, inspectors would pore over every inch of the car, inside and out, checking for any flaws in paint, trim, or fit and finish. Only when a car met Mercedes-Benz's famously high standards was it cleared for delivery. Building a W116 in Sindelfingen during the 70s was a complex dance between machinery and skilled human hands, all focused on precision, quality, and durability. It wasn't the fastest process, but it ensured that each S-Class rolling off the line lived up to the reputation Mercedes was building. Mercedes knew that luxury car buyers weren't all the same. Some wanted a car they could enjoy driving themselves, while others preferred to be chauffeured in the back seat. And some just wanted the biggest, baddest engine available. The W116 lineup was designed to cater to these different tastes, mainly through wheelbase options and engine choices. The two primary designations you'll see are SE and SEL. The S stood for Sonderklasse, as we know. The E stood for Einspritzung, which means fuel injection in German. All W16s, except the base 280S, had fuel injection, but the E stayed in the name for injected models. The key difference was the L, which stood for Lang, meaning long. The SEL models had a longer wheelbase than the standard SE models. Specifically, the distance between the front and rear wheels was extended by 100 millimeters, which is about 4 inches. Where did that extra length go? Directly into the rear passenger compartment. This meant significantly more legroom for those sitting in the back. So, the SE models were often seen as the driver's S-Class, still spacious and luxurious, but slightly more manageable in size. The SEL models, with their limo-like rear legroom, were clearly aimed at buyers who expected to be driven. Visually, the difference was most noticeable in the longer rear doors of the SEL. Beyond the SE-SEL distinction, the main variations came down to the engine choice, which we touched on earlier. You could have had the 280S, which is the entry point, with the carbureted 2.8-liter inline-6, the 280SE and SEL model, with the fuel-injected 2.8-liter inline-6, offering better performance and refinement. A good balance for many European buyers. The 350 SE and SEL model, equipped with the smooth 3.5-liter V8. A step up in power and effortless cruising. Or the 450 SE-SEL, featuring the potent 4.5-liter V8. This was the standard top-tier engine for much of the production run, offering strong performance. In North America, due to emissions regulations, the 4.5-liter V8 was often the only engine available for a time. And then there was the ultimate variant, the 450 SEL 6.9. This wasn't just an SEL with a bigger engine, it was practically a separate model in terms of engineering and exclusivity. Available only in the long wheelbase SEL form, it packed that monstrous 6.9-liter V8 and the unique hydropneumatic suspension. It also came loaded with luxury features that were optional on other models, like climate control and velour or leather upholstery. It was incredibly expensive, costing significantly more than a regular 450 SEL. and was built in relatively small numbers, just over 7,300 units. It was aimed squarely at those who demanded the absolute best in performance and luxury, a true flagship for the brand. So, whether you wanted a sophisticated six-cylinder sedan, a powerful V8 cruiser, a spacious car for being driven in, or the ultimate high-performance luxury statement, the W116 range had an option, allowing Mercedes to cover the high-end market very effectively. So, what was it actually like to drive a W116 back in the 70s, or even today as a classic? Well, reviewers and owners consistently praise these cars for a few key things: solidity, comfort, and competence. First off, the feeling of solidity was undeniable. Closing the door sounded less like a clang and more like a bank vault sealing shut. Everything felt substantial and well put together. On the road, this translated into a feeling of immense stability and safety. These cars felt planted, secure, and unfazed by crosswinds or uneven pavement. That sophisticated independent suspension and the rigid body structure really paid off. Ride comfort was another major highlight. The suspension, whether the standard steel springs or the fancy hydrop pneumatic system on the 6.9, did an excellent job of smoothing out bumps and potholes. It wasn't floaty like some American luxury cars of the era. It was controlled, absorbing imperfections without isolating the driver completely from the road. Combined with the quiet cabin thanks to those subframes and good insulation, the W116 was a superb long-distance cruiser. You could cover hundreds of miles and arrive feeling relaxed. Handling was surprisingly good for such large, heavy cars. While nobody would mistake an S-Class for a nimble sports car, the precise steering power assisted, of course, and the capable suspension meant it could be driven with confidence, even on winding roads. Body roll was well controlled, and the car felt predictable and safe when pushed. The powerful four-wheel disc brakes provided strong, fade-free stopping power, adding to the driver's confidence. Performance varied depending on the engine, naturally. The 280 models were adequate, especially the fuel-injected SE and SEL model, offering decent pace for everyday driving, particularly in Europe where fuel costs were higher. The V8 models, 350 and 450, provided much more effortless acceleration and high-speed cruising ability, making them popular choices for those who wanted more performance or lived in places like North America with vast distances to cover. And the 450 SEL 6.9? That was in another league. Its massive torque meant it could surge forward with surprising urgency, pinning you back in your seat. It was incredibly fast for a sedan of its time, capable of embarrassing many sports cars while carrying 4 people in total comfort. First off, Jaguar XJ. The Jag was often praised for its even more supple ride and perhaps more stylish looks. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, though. However, the Mercedes generally had a reputation for being much more reliable and solidly built than the contemporary XJ, which could be known for electrical gremlins. The S-Class felt engineered, while the Jag felt more like artistry, sometimes with the associated temperament. BMW joined the race as well with the 7 Series E23, introduced 1977. BMW was carving out its niche as the ultimate driving machine. The 7 Series offered a sportier driving experience than the S-Class, with potentially sharper handling. However, the W116 often felt more substantial, arguably had a more comfortable ride, especially the 6.9, and projected a more formal, stately image compared to the sportier BMW overall. The W116 delivered a driving experience that perfectly matched its mission. Supremely comfortable, incredibly safe feeling, competent, and built like it would last forever. Reliability was generally excellent, especially for the mechanical components, further cementing its reputation as a car you could depend on. It wasn't necessarily the most exciting car to drive in its class, but it was arguably the most reassuring and confidence-inspiring. When the Mercedes-Benz W116 S-Class hit the market in 1972, it wasn't just another new car, it was an event. The reception around the world was overwhelmingly positive, and the car quickly established itself as the benchmark for luxury sedans. Its combination of advanced engineering, pioneering safety features, understated elegance, and sheer build quality resonated with buyers globally. In Europe, especially its home market of Germany, it became the default choice for successful business leaders, politicians, and anyone who wanted a car that projected quiet confidence and impeccable taste. The range of engines, particularly the efficient for the time 2.8-liter inline-six, made it accessible, relatively speaking, even in countries with high fuel taxes. In North America, the S-Class became a powerful status symbol. While American luxury brands like Cadillac and Lincoln offered larger, flashier cars, the Mercedes represented a different kind of luxury, one based on engineering substance rather than just size and chrome. The W116, typically sold there with the smooth 4.5-liter V8, appealed to affluent buyers who appreciated its build quality, safety, and discreet prestige. It became the car of choice for doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, and Hollywood stars who wanted something sophisticated and European. The different, larger bumpers required by U.S. safety regulations slightly altered the look, but the car's essential character shone through. The W116 also found favor with governments and diplomatic corps worldwide. Its reputation for safety, reliability, and comfort made it an ideal vehicle for transporting heads of state, ambassadors, and other dignitaries. Seeing a fleet of black W116 sedans often signified an important official event. This official use further cemented its image as a car of substance and importance. Its cultural impact was significant too. The W116 started appearing in movies and television shows, often used to portray wealthy or influential characters. While perhaps not as iconic on screen as some other cars, its presence always added a touch of class and realism. It wasn't just a car, it was shorthand for success and discerning taste. Sales figures reflected this global popularity. Over its production run from 1972 to 1980, Mercedes built nearly 500,000 W116s, around 473,000 units. That's a huge number for such an expensive, high-end vehicle, especially during the turbulent economic times of the 1970s oil crisis. The long-wheelbase SEL models and the exclusive 450 SEL 6.9 contributed significantly to the model's prestige, even if they sold in smaller numbers. The W116 wasn't just popular, it was respected. It won the European Car of the Year award in 1974, a rare feat for such a large and expensive car, highlighting its technical excellence. It successfully defined what a modern luxury sedan should be, blending comfort, performance, and groundbreaking safety in a way that no competitor could quite match at the time. It truly earned its title as the first S-Class and became a global symbol of automotive excellence and prestige. The Mercedes-Benz W116 S-Class wasn't just a successful car in its own time. It cast a long shadow, influencing not only its successor, but the automotive world for years to come. Its production run ended in 1980, although the 6.9 model ceased in 1979 in some markets, with final production wrapping up earlier, making way for the next generation. The successor was the W126 S-Class, introduced in late 1979. The W126 took the fundamental principles established by the W116 safety, comfort, build quality, advanced engineering, and refined them further for the 1980s. You could clearly see the W116's influence. The focus on safety remained paramount, with the W126 building upon the rigid cell and crumple zone concepts. ABS became standard, or more widely available. However, the W126 also represented significant progress. Learning from the fuel crises of the 70s, Mercedes focused heavily on efficiency with the new model. The W126 was designed with much better aerodynamics, featuring smoother lines, flush-fitting glass, and integrated bumpers where regulations allowed, resulting in a lower drag coefficient. This helped improve fuel economy and reduce wind noise. It was also lighter than the W116, thanks to the increased use of high-strength, low-alloy steel and aluminum components, like the hood on V8 models. The engine lineup was updated with more efficient units. While the W126 looked quite different, more modern and less imposing than the W116, it retained that essential S-Class DNA of solidity and engineering excellence that its predecessor had cemented. The W116 had laid the groundwork, proving the concepts, while the W126 optimized and modernized them. Today, the W116 holds a special place for classic car collectors and Mercedes-Benz enthusiasts. Its status as the first officially designated S-Class gives it historical significance. Collectors appreciate its robust engineering, timeless design, and the groundbreaking safety features it introduced. These cars were built to last, and well-maintained examples are still capable of comfortable daily driving even decades later. Though keeping the complex systems, especially fuel injection and the 6.9's hydraulics, in top shape requires expertise. The 450 SEL 6.9 is particularly sought after due to its rarity, legendary performance, and unique technical features. Finding a good one can be challenging and expensive, but it represents the pinnacle of the W116 lineup. However, even the more common 280 and V8 models are gaining appreciation for their classic Mercedes virtues. They offer a tangible connection to an era when Mercedes-Benz arguably over-engineered its cars, prioritizing durability and safety above all else. The W116's legacy is clear. It defined the modern luxury sedan. It proved that safety didn't have to compromise comfort or performance. It established the S-Class nameplate as the benchmark in its segment, a position Mercedes-Benz has strived to maintain ever since. While technology has moved on dramatically, the fundamental principles embodied by the W116, a strong passenger cell, controlled deformation zones, advanced suspension, and a focus on occupant protection, remain the bedrock of automotive safety design today. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement of engineering prowess that continues to be respected. So there you have it, a glimpse into the world of the Mercedes-Benz W116 S-Class and its 1970s production line. From the lessons learned from its predecessors, through the meticulous design and groundbreaking engineering focused heavily on safety, to the careful assembly process in Sindelfingen, the W116 was truly a landmark car. It wasn't just about luxury, it was about setting new standards in safety, comfort, and build quality that forced the entire industry to take notice. It rightfully earned its place as the first S-Class and became a global symbol of prestige and automotive excellence. Even today, its legacy lives on, not just in the classic car world, but in the safety features we take for granted in modern vehicles. It was a car built with purpose, precision, and a whole lot of German engineering know-how. Ever ridden in one of these tanks in a tuxedo? Or maybe you've just admired them from afar? Let's hear your stories in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into legends like this, don't forget to subscribe. You might also like our other videos. Make sure to check that out. Thanks for watching.